45 basically struggles to defend his record um, amid the setbacks on immigration, trade, in North Korea. 45 proclaimed in a freewheeling speech to a to a conference of conservatives last weekend that America is winning, but his administration has been on a pronounced losing streak over the past week. 45 is losing ground on top priorities to curb illegal immigration, cut the trade deficit, and blunt North Korea's nuclear threat. Setbacks that complicate his planned re-election message as a can-do president who's making historic progress, and of course he's not. He's not making any progress at all. He hasn't done anything since being in office. Late last week, 45 flew home, empty-handed, from a summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Hanoi, and within days, new satellite images appeared to show that North Korea was secretly rebuilding a rocket launching site. On Tuesday, the Department of Homeland Security announced that unauthorized border crossings have spiked to the highest pace in 12 years, despite 45's hardline rhetoric and new policies aimed at deterring immigrants. And on Wednesday, the Commerce Department said that the nation's trade deficit is at a record high, in part due to tariffs 45 imposed on allies and adversaries. 45 vowed throughout his 2016 campaign and during his squadancy to shrink that trade deficit, which he views as a measure of other nations taking advantage of the United States. The squatter hasn't shown much of an ability to cut good deals with Congress or anyone else yet, said Joaquin Castro, who's a Democrat from Texas who was mulling a Senate run in 2020. Almost the only time he has been successful at one of his goals is when he can set the terms unilaterally. That's why he's done a lot of executive orders, executive actions like the travel ban, deregulations, emergency declaration. Those are things that don't require any negotiation at all. 45 took office on a pledge to buck conventional wisdom, sideline Washington's political class, and tackle long-standing problems with a mix of outside in the box improvisation and deal-making skills honed during his real estate career. 45 claims I alone can fix it. Yet he has struggled to fulfill some of his signature campaign promises. 45 has constantly blamed others for his woes. Of course, it's his problem, not everybody else's. If he's the one that causes this problem, then it's his fault. He has criticized the administrations of Barack Obama and former President Barack Obama and former President George W. Bush for not reforming the immigration system or reigning in North Korea. He has railed at Democrats for failing to support his proposed border wall and implored them to ratify new trade deals. And he has even attacked fellow Republicans by slamming former House Speaker Paul Ryan during a Rose Garden news conference last month for not having pushed faster to get a deal on the wall. The White House officials argued that rather than being at a setback, the immigration trends could bolster 45's argument that he is justified in taking unilateral action on the border. Federal authorities detained 76,103 immigrants at the southern border in February, which was up from 58,000 to 207 a month earlier. Press Secretary Fat Fuck Sanders said Wednesday that the numbers were clear evidence that 45 was right to declare a national emergency last month, and technically it's not a national emergency. Even I can tell you that. If that doesn't define crisis, I don't know what does, she said. That's because you're a dumb fat fucking bitch. That's why. Congress should have fixed this problem. The squatter tried multiple times to get Congress to work with him to adjust the crisis. They failed to do so. It's not that they failed to do so, it's because 45 acts like a fucking kid and doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And now the squatter has to do what is absolutely necessary. Declaring a national emergency was not necessary. There was nothing really. It was not a national emergency, and if it was, he would have declared it 2 years ago when he started squatting in the White House, and he didn't. Republicans' allies praised the squatter for eliminating business regulations, helping pass a major tax cut in 2017, which technically went to the rich, appointing 2 conservative Supreme Court justices and scores of lower-level judges, and nurturing an economy with low unemployment, which technically that was Obama's low unemployment, not 45's, even though 45's trying to take credit for it. They emphasized that challenges such as North Korea will take time and chided Democrats for blocking 45's agenda. The House is just involved in investigations and really not concerned about legislation, said Ron Johnson, who's a Republican from Wisconsin. Senator David Perdue, who's a Republican for Georgia, said 45 is very frustrated right now with all of us. He wants to get results, and we're looking at a 2-year period where it's pretty obvious the other side doesn't want to do anything. 45's critics have said his policies have made things worse, which is true, it has. On immigration, the administration has sought to block asylum seekers at legal ports of entry along the border, prompting them to try to find alternative pathways into the country. The squatter has shut down parts of the federal government for up to 35 days, the longest such closure in U.S. history, in an ill-fated fight for border wall funding, even though experts said the surge of migrant families is not a threat to national security and that a wall would do little to stop it. On trade, 45's tariff war with China has harmed U.S. farmers as Beijing slashed agricultural imports. Although the squatter has signaled that a trade deal is close, analysts said an accord would not fundamentally alter the U.S. trade relationship with the world's second-largest economy. And on North Korea, officials have said the squatter's decision to rush forward with bilateral summits with Kim have led to difficulties for U.S. negotiators engaging with their counterparts over technical and complicated nuclear matters, as Kim has preferred to deal directly with 45. Simon Rosenberg, founder of NDN, a think tank, noted that the tax cut has not met GOP projections for economic growth and could add significantly to the ballooning federal deficit. The reality is he can't point to a single thing that's better today than when he came to office, Rosenberg said. Although he has projected confidence, 45 has fretted in private over his difficulties. During the government shutdown, the 45's approval rating dipped to 37% in the Washington Post, one of the lowest marks of his tenure. Since then, his numbers have fluctuated. This week, a Wall Street news poll put his approval rating at 46%, while Quinnipiac put it at 38%. And it's more than likely it's at 38, if not less. During a marathon speech Saturday to the Conservative Political Action Committee, 45 veered off script, spending much of the time attacking his rivals, including Democrats, attacking Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and news organizations. 45 spent less time on his governing record. On trade, he defended his use of tariffs and suggested the United States has accrued large trade deficits because past administrations were afraid to use that tool as leverage. On North Korea, he blamed the Obama administration for allowing the Kim regime to send rockets flying all over the place, and said his team was making a lot of progress, which they're not. On immigration, 45 called current U.S. laws crazy and said he felt empowered to declare a national emergency because our Congress can't act. I said you can't act either, but it was not a national emergency, like I fucking said before. If it was a fucking national emergency, you would have declared a fucking emergency 2 years ago. He says it's not my fault I inherited this mess, but we're fixing it. You started this mess, and yes, and no, you're not fixing it. Because you're not trying. 45 at times also appears determined to prove that he is making progress, which he's not. He publicly contradicted his own intelligence chiefs who testified in Congress in January that there's no evidence that North Korea is willing to give up its nuclear program. Asked by a reporter Wednesday about the satellite images that show construction work at the satellite launching station, 45 said he would be very disappointed if the news was confirmed, but he added that was a very early report. Senior White House aides have sought to cast the Hanoi summit as a sign of 45's negotiating fortitude and unwillingness to settle for a bad deal. Yet 45 has grown frustrated by the largely negative coverage of the summit, a senior White House official said. And his aides briefed lawmakers this week to explain his goals. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity to characterize internal discussions. He thought they closed the gap on some issues. Senator Lindsey said Senator Dumbass Lindsey Graham, who's a Republican from South Carolina. He just said North Korea isn't ready to make a deal. Last year, 45 berated Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen over the rising border crossings, though he no longer blames Nielsen. Aides said 45 told his staff that the shutdown dispute sent an important message to his conservative base that he is fighting for them, which he's not. He only cares about himself. He doesn't give a shit about anybody else. On trade, 45 postponed the March 1st deadline to impose another round of tariffs on China in hopes of a deal. White House aides are planning events for 45 and Vice President inbred redneck Mike Pence in the Midwest this spring to tout an updated trade deal reached last year with Canada and Mexico that Congress has yet to ratify. Senator Mike Rounds, who's a Republican for South Dakota, said in an interview that farmers support 45 but are growing antsy. They don't support him at all. They're just pretending to. These folks are with you. They want to see you be successful, which 45 has never been successful because he doesn't know what it's like to be one. Rounds said, speaking as if he was sending a message to 45, but we're going to have to deliver some results. So far, these results have been failing bigly.